because this is the key, right? We're using the right foods to feed the microbiome. Key to health right there. I just gave it to you. When we optimize that, we prevent disease, your pets feel amazing, and they live a long and vibrant life. Have you wondered, what are the top 5 tips that I need to know as a pet parent to make sure that I'm doing the best for my dog and my cat? You ever wondered why your veterinarian always recommends the same foods or uses those main brands like Hills and Royal Canin? And have you ever looked at the ingredient list and wondered, like, is this actually the most optimal food for my pet to achieve optimal health and live a long and vibrant life? So I'm Dr. Katie Woodley, the natural pet doctor. This is our weekly coffee talk with the doc. And today is special because we've been talking a lot about how to feed your pets, what to look for, what's going on in the environment, what's in the food, how does the things in the environment affect our pet's health. And what we're going to do is we're going to break it down. 5 tips, my top tips for feeding your pets. So I hope you're excited. I love that I see all of you joining me live. Say hey, post your questions. We are going deep into food today, so I hope you guys are ready. Grab a pen and paper because I'm really, really excited. I love seeing those hearts. I know you guys are excited too. All right, tip number 1. We're gonna get straight into it. The thing that I need you to do as a pet parent, as an empowered pet parent, wanting the best for your pets, learn how to read those pet food labels. You ever turn that back of the bag around? You're like, what does this mean? Is this good? What is that? Is that a real food? Or have you ever thought, you know, I love this food because there's blueberries in it, or there's real food that's listed on the ingredient list, right? I love seeing that. I love seeing real food that I can recognize, that I can read, and I understand what it means. Who's here with me on that, right? However, if we don't know how to read those pet food labels, what's happening is that there's all these little tricks that pet food companies can utilize where they're hiding ingredients. They make you think like there's real things in there, but those real ingredients may make up less than 1%. That's the salt rule. So we've written blog posts on a lot of this, on how to read pet food labels, and we must become empowered to know what they mean, because there are those tricks. So natural flavorings. Do you see natural flavorings on the back of your bag? That can be any type of meat. So if you have a pet that has allergies, or you're trying to do a limited ingredient food trial, and the food you're feeding has natural flavorings, that can be beef, chicken, pork, can be anything. Could be horse, could be anything. And so what's happening then is we're actually still stimulating your pet's body, creating potential inflammation, and you're never going to see resolution of the thing that you're treating. So the allergies continue, your pet still might have loose stool, and you're like, why is this happening? I'm spending so much money on these prescription foods. So look for natural flavorings. Other things that we're looking for, I mentioned the salt rule. The salt rule is so important, and it's something that I came across doing my nutritional research and diving deep into that we're not taught in vet school. I'm a veterinarian. I didn't know what the salt rule was. How crazy is that? So I don't expect pet parents to know either, unless you're going deep into the pet food industry and finding these things, which can be hard to find. And so with the salt rule, what it is less than 1% of those ingredients that follow salt are in that bag of food. So I mentioned blueberries because I love blueberries. They're great antioxidant food. They help reduce inflammation. They help calm your pet. They're really good for the immune system and overall body health. However, a lot of times what you'll find is that blueberries are listed after salt. So when you're looking at that label, find the salt and see what's listed afterwards. Most of the time, or what should be listed after, are your vitamins, your minerals, so your synthetic ingredients or your organ meats, because those will make up less to balance that diet. That's what we should see. I don't want to see real food after salt, because that's just a trick for that pet food company to make you feel good that you're buying real food, right? Crazy. Also, a few other things to look for on that pet food label. Do you see meat meal rather than say chicken meal or turkey meal or fish meal? When we see a generic label like meat, we don't know what type of meat. So this is kind of like natural flavorings. This could be anything. And we have to remember too, the pet food industry is not very well regulated. And the meats that typically go into pet foods are the discards from the human side. They weren't good enough for us to eat it. So if you see human grade meat, so a lot of companies are doing that, and I commend them because that's still food that we could eat. So it's not off, like meat that's off. Who wants to eat that? Well, that goes in your pet food. Or not poisoned necessarily, but I mean, we see euthanasia recalls, right? They have euthanasia fluid in that meat. How does that happen? Discarded meat, discarded carcasses, roadkill. Where does it all go? Unfortunately, I have to say that sometimes it gets into the pet food industry. Not always. So I don't want to scare everyone off of kibble and then we're feeding unbalanced diets. But this is why we need to know where those meat sources are coming from, what's going in, how to analyze that pet food label, looking for artificial colors and preservatives. We should not see red dye in your pet food. Your dogs don't care what color the kibble is. I hate to break it to people. They don't care. They do it because we feel good, right? We like seeing color variety. Your dog does not care that its kibble is colored. And so when they're putting these food dyes in, it's just like kids, right? They're doing all sorts of studies that are showcasing how these dyes are leading to anxiety. They're leading to all sorts of health issues. The same with our pets. Why do you think that disease, cancer rates are all increasing in our pets? Because of what's going into the food. There's such a big correlation with what's going into our pet food industry that is causing issues for our pets. So looking for those artificial colors, preservatives, we want to see the more natural preservatives on the food or on the ingredient list, okay? So look for, rosemary is an artificial preservative. You might see like vitamin E, clove. We don't want to see ethoxyquin. Guess what? Fish-based foods use mainly ethoxyquin, which is a potential carcinogen. Carcinogen means can lead to cancer. So important. Also ingredient splitting. So go to thenaturalpetdoctor.com, check out our blog post because it goes more in depth, but this is the main topics that we need to know as pet parents, that I want you to know as a veterinarian so that we can make sure our pets are on the best food. But ingredient splitting. So this is where the pet food company will take something, let's say corn. This is common. So ingredients you don't necessarily want to see in your pet's food. They'll take that corn and they'll break it down into its constituent components. So we have corn gluten meal, we have, I don't know, there's like 15, you can just break down corn into its little individual sections and they list it out based on weight. That's what the pet food label is doing. The component that makes up the most of that pet food is going to be listed first. And then we have everything by weight percentage. So when we break apart ingredients, when we do ingredient splitting, we can move corn further down the list. But if we combined it all, a lot of times it makes up more than the meat itself. So those are just a few little tips that you need to look and watch out for on the pet food label, but go through that and make sure you're looking at what are the AAFCO labels. Most pet foods are going to have AAFCO labels, and you can see if they're balancing that food by nutrient profiles or a feeding trial. So here's some scary things. I hope you're ready for this if you don't know what the difference between those are. So ideally, we'd want a feeding trial, correct? I know a lot of you are like, okay, yeah, of course, we want to feed the pets, see how they respond, do blood work, make sure they're not getting sick, right? And see how they do over time, right? Feeding trials require 6 pets for over 6 months being fed that diet, and blood work is tested 4 times. 6 pets, 6 months, 4 times. That is your feeding trial. I don't think that really showcases if a pet's going to do well long term. The biggest thing that they don't even care if the pet gets fat, as long as they don't get sick, develop like kidney, liver disease in 6 months. I'm sorry, but food doesn't necessarily cause changes in that short of a time. So there are a lot of limitations with these food trials. Now, nutrient profile, what that company has done is they've taken the NRC, the National Research Council's requirements for each individual mineral and vitamin, and they looked at, okay, we need certain milligrams in this food, or the concentration needs to be this for minimums and maximums in that pet food. And so not optimum, but min and maxes. We don't want to go over that. We can't be under that. And they take the food and they haven't fed it to a pet. They haven't done a feeding trial, but they just put the supplements in based on that. So there's no food trial done. So that's another thing to look at. So make sure, this is tip number 1, learn to read those pet food labels. It will open your eyes, change your life, and change your pet's life for the better, which is why we're here, right? To help our pets thrive naturally. So number 2, and I'm getting some questions, I'm seeing them as you guys are posting them, and I'm going to cover those. So I have, is raw the answer? Corn can be sprayed with glyphosate. Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. And we're going to go through it though. So there's a little nuances to some of these. So don't worry, I'm going to cover them. Okay. Tip 2, assess your pet's microbiome. Okay, Dr. Katie, what the heck does that mean? I can't like look at my pet's gut. Okay. So we've talked a lot about microbiome. This is the trillions of bacteria, cells that make up your pet's GI tract, oral microbiome. So starts from the mouth, goes all the way to the back end. This can also include organ systems. Everything's a microbiome, like a biome, and everything needs to be balanced and working together for optimal health. If your pet's microbiome is off, they're going to get sick. It's going to lead to inflammation, chronic disease, dental disease, kidney disease can happen. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. You're going to see GI problems, potentially like diarrhea, vomiting. They don't want to eat their food, allergies. Everything comes back to gut health. The microbiome is essential, and it is not talked about enough. And I get really excited because this is something that is starting to be focused on more. You'll see companies like Animal Biome that are actually testing stool samples from dogs and cats to look at what bacteria populations does this pet have, and how can we influence it with like fecal transplants. Huge, so powerful. We can look at certain bacterial strains and we can say, if that's in a higher population in like the mouth, your pet is more prone to dental disease. We can use probiotics to put good things back in. There's a supplement called Azadil that is specifically for kidney patients, that has been formulated specifically for that kidney microbiome to help that pet. Amazing things. So if your pet's getting recurring infections, allergies, loose stool, they don't want to eat their food, they have low energy levels, chronic disease, liver disease, cancer, anything, there is some form of leaky gut, and we need to assess where your pet's microbiome health is and how you can fix that. And there's a lot of different supplements and things that we can use, different types of foods. If you want more, of that, join our webinar this month, register for that. So you can go to thenaturalpetdoctor.com. We're taking an hour to talk about your pet's microbiome and how you can optimize it. Key. That is the key to health. And we can influence that with diet and other things that we're going to talk about, which leads me into Tip 3, biologically appropriate foods. If you've listened to me talk before, I talk a lot about this. And what that means is feeding the foods that are appropriate to optimize your dog and cat's health. So this is not necessarily feeding a kibble diet. Our cats are obligate carnivores. They need meat. They don't need kibble. They don't do well on carbs. They need proteins, and they can also utilize fats. So get your cats off the kibble. And I can understand it is super hard. I have a cat that's addicted to kibble that we rescued. I talk a lot about her, Kiwi cat, and it's hard. It is really hard. And some cats, they forget what real food is and what it tastes like, and that they should actually like real food. So dogs tend to be more omnivorous. So they actually have some of the digestive enzymes to break down carbs, starches, so amylase in their saliva, whereas cats lack those enzymes. That's why they don't do well with carbs, and why we can treat a lot of diseases by taking them off of kibble diets. So if you have a cat that's diabetic, we can actually put them into remission by getting them onto a biologically appropriate diet, meaning at least a canned food that's low in carbs, high in protein, or a raw diet, and they'll go into remission, meaning they don't need insulin anymore. That's how powerful food is, and how amazing it is when we can use food as medicine, food therapy, to treat and resolve diseases like diabetes. So carbohydrates in kibble's a high carb diet. It just is. Even some of the better brands that tend to, utilize the higher proteins and the organ meats for the vitamins and the minerals in that food, there's still going to be a higher carbohydrate diet. I mean, there's other problems with kibble diet too, if it's extruded. So kibble's extruded usually. So it's processed at a really high temperature, and we create pro-inflammatory mediators. We can get things like N-glycation products. We create a lot of things with the way that the food is actually processed. And there has to be stuff that is sprayed back onto it. So that's animal digest, because most pets won't eat kibble straight off of the processing line. So if you've ever had a pet, dog, cat, that looks at their food and is like, yeah, no. Like, I've been there. That's why I transitioned Finner and German Shepherd off of kibble. He looked at me like I was feeding him acid. Like, I'm not even joking. I wish I had videoed it, and maybe you can relate. I see a lot of hearts. So I have a feeling that a lot of people are dealing with that right now. But he would pick up the kibble. He'd look at you like, really, is this like, this is it? This is all you got? And he would drop it. And then he'd be like seriously, this face, magic. Because what it showed me was that it wasn't optimal for him, for his health, for what he wanted to eat. And we transitioned him to a balanced home cooked diet, and he started dancing for his food. No joke. And I see that over and over and over again with the patients that I treat, where we create nutritional plans that work for you as a pet parent, that work for your pet, that is balanced, and they love it. And we can fix so many diseases, or we can prevent them from happening in the first place, which is always key. So if you need help with a nutritional plan, figuring out what is biologically appropriate for your dog or your cat, let me know. That's part of what I do. And I love it, because this is the key, right? We're using the right foods to feed the microbiome. Key to health right there. I just gave it to you. When we optimize that, we prevent disease, your pets feel amazing, and they live a long and vibrant life. I say that a lot, but it is. That's the key to health. It's the key to health for us too. You are what you eat. You eat McDonald's, you're not going to be healthy. You're not going to feel good either. It's processed food. And so the same with our pets. So there's different forms of food that we can feed our pets. Kibble. So yes, some people need to feed kibble due to lifestyle, due to cost, due to other things. So that's where we can add in leafy greens at least 3 times a week. We can add in foods that have high antioxidant properties. So your leafy greens, kale, spinach, you can add broccoli, carrots, all the things that are really good for us tend to be really good for your pets. So there are some foods that are toxic to dogs and cats. So go to my blog post, Safe and Toxic Foods for Your Pet. So at thenaturalpetdoctor.com, because I break it all down for you. And I also showcase those foods that are going to optimize your pet's health. So canned is going to be better than kibble, but there are a lot of bad canned foods out there too. And they have lots of pea protein or fillers in them or carrageenan, which irritates the GI lining, which upsets the microbiome, leads to leaky gut, which allows food, bacteria, and toxins to leak into the bloodstream, causing inflammation, disease. So we have to go back to tip number one, learn how to read those pet food labels, because we can think that we're feeding a better diet, but there's junk that they put in it. So we also have on the spectrum of different types of food, freeze-dried raw. So that's a good option to transition pets off of kibble onto a more biologically appropriate diet where we're not going straight to raw. I don't like going straight to raw. I know that's commonly talked about and just like powering through like potential diarrhea and stuff. But I also see a lot of pets, and I used to see this all the time when I worked in the clinic and didn't do house calls, is that these pets, when they transition straight from kibble onto a raw diet, they develop diarrhea. And sometimes it's pretty severe because their microbiome was not set up appropriately to be able to digest a food that is very different energetically and processed very differently in the body. So I always recommend a transition, right? We don't need to switch within 24 hours. Remember, food is the foundation for health. It is the long-term treatment option for our pets to optimize their health. So you can use freeze-dried raw and start integrating that into your pet's diet to transition them over. I do a lot of homemade balanced diets for people who like cooking, or they feel like they want to control the ingredients that go into the pet's food. I felt great cooking for Finn. Finn was a 75-pound German Shepherd. Feeding raw to him was pretty dang expensive. And he also did better on a home-cooked diet. So not every pet does well with raw. Finn did great on a home-cooked diet, and I could source organic meats, grass-fed meats, organic vegetables. I knew what was going, for the most part, like we can't control everything, of course, but I knew that I was doing the best that I could to create the most optimized diet for him, which started as just kind of a wellness diet, and then it turned into a cancer treatment diet. And so we can use different foods to help use it as medicine. So, and then we have raw. So raw is not bad for your pets. Some pets need that transition. We need to optimize the microbiome. So that's where we assess the microbiome. Do a slow transition to raw. I would say over 2 weeks' time if we're going from kibble to raw. And if your pet's prone to digestive upset, I do see a lot of pets that do really well with raw, but some need that slow transition. And it may not be appropriate for them. They have loose stool. They're just like, man, I don't like it. So we need to make sure the raw is warm. I see a lot of raw being fed cold, and raw energetically is a cold food anyways. So pets that are cold in general tend to run cold. They have loose stool, they have digestive upset. We call that spleen deficiency in Chinese medicine. Their appetites are a bit down. Sometimes raw isn't the answer, but raw can be really appropriate for a lot of dogs, especially for dealing with allergy issues, hot, itchy skin. That raw is really soothing and cooling to the body and can help put out some of that inflammation. And then we're removing the grains potentially, or a lot of those processed meats and proteins and foods that are in kibble, and kibble's warming anyways. So we need to get them off that kibble diet. if your pet has allergies. Otherwise, we can do everything. Like we'll do a lot of herbs and supplement the microbiome with probiotics, digestive enzymes. However, allergies tend not to go away if we don't fix the diet. We can get them to be lessened, but I always tell clients that your pet's probably not going to have all their allergy symptoms resolved unless we look at the diet and we adjust that. So those are some of the different categories of food, but remember, feeding biologically appropriate foods to our dogs and cats are not small dogs, so keep that in mind. Number 4 for our top tips on feeding your pet, supplements. The goal with supplements is to fill in gaps. We don't want to over supplement our pets, which is super easy to do. We can go on the internet and look up, my pet has allergies, and you can see 1,500 different things. Need to start all these so I can optimize my pet's health. We don't want to do that. We want to use supplements to fill in the gaps that we may be missing with nutrition or with underlying imbalances that our pet has. So that's where we can look at probiotics. Where's our microbiome? Do that animal biome test if you can. Send in a stool sample. See where your pet's microbiome is. You can see what their population of bacteria is. And then you can actually specify which probiotics they should be getting, which is really neat and optimized, right? Who here hates wasting money on supplements and things that are just doing nothing, right? Unfortunately, there are a lot of probiotics out there that are doing just that. So I don't want you wasting money and throwing away money. However, we do tend to look at probiotics to help support. Now, keeping in mind there's trillions of cells, so I don't expect probiotics to fix problems. That's where looking at food to feed the microbiome the appropriate things, and then we can supplement with probiotics to help gain faster results. Also, digestive enzymes. As your pets get older, they don't produce as many digestive enzymes as they did when they were younger. So we want to make sure that we're putting those back into them. We're helping them break down their food, digest their food, so it turns into the things they need in the body to help regenerate, repair, and optimize their health. If your pet's on a kibble diet, they hands down, even if you have a puppy, they need to be on a digestive enzyme. Kibble's really hard for them to break down. So getting them onto digestive enzymes is essential. If your pet is on a kibble diet, dry food diet, digestive enzymes today, you need to use them. The other thing is if we're dealing with things like leaky gut, adding in colostrum can help. So we've talked about colostrum previously. There is this amazing product from Earth Buddy, so gut health, that we're actually giving away during our webinar this month that you can register for at thenaturalpetdoctor.com. Colostrum is really good at reducing inflammation because of the immunoglobulins, the lactoferrins, and other components that make up colostrum. Colostrum is the first milk that the mother cow produces. And don't worry, Earth Buddy, they are doing it right. They're not taking the milk from the baby. They're taking it once the baby calf has gotten everything it needs. But we can utilize this to really heal the gut health. And there's blueberry powder in it. It's just a great product to really heal the GI tract, reduce inflammation, and help improve the immune system. And then finally, number 5. So tip number 5 for the top 5 tips for feeding your pet. We must assess the toxic burden in our pet's environment and in their food. So this has stuff to do with feeding a diet, feeding food to our pets. But if we're not reducing the toxins in our pet's environment or optimizing their detox, their methylation pathways, yes, methylation is huge for us, for our pets, and we can manipulate it with the foods we feed. But also, if you're spraying your yard with Roundup or glyphosate every weekend to get rid of those weeds, I've got news for you. Your pet's not going to be healthy, and neither are you. And that sounds harsh. However, glyphosate is a known carcinogen. It has led to so many different types of cancers. There are studies that have been done by multiple universities showcasing that pets that are exposed to these herbicides, these toxins, have a lot higher chance of developing cancer. We need to be looking at how frequently are we using flea and tick products? Are we detoxing the pet's body after giving a heartworm prevention? I'm not against using these medications, but what we need to look at is not just to give something, right? Because that's what we're supposed to do. You're supposed to use flea and tick medication every month, heartworm prevention year round. Do you have mosquitoes in the winter where you're at? If not, take a break. Give your pets a break. It is a drug. It is a thing that is affecting your pet's body. It's affecting their microbiome. So we need to assess the pros and cons of giving these medications. The other thing is glyphosate. Glyphosate is everywhere. It just is. It's in 70% of the planet's water supply. We get rained on. The rain has glyphosate, Roundup in it. It is water soluble. How scary is that? Like, that's super scary. Even if you are not using it, you are ingesting, breathing in glyphosate, microparticles. Many people, most people now, if you were to be tested for glyphosate, you would show up positive. You have glyphosate in your body. This is why it's so important that we feed our bodies, we feed our pets' bodies the most optimal diets, getting in those organic vegetables. Because the other thing is that happens with glyphosate is if you're feeding processed dog food, I don't care what it is, if there's vegetables in there, they've probably been sprayed with glyphosate. GMO foods, so genetically modified organisms, they're made that way to survive Roundup being sprayed on them. The other crazy thing is that the agricultural use of glyphosate, they're using it to mature vegetables faster at the end of harvest. So what's happening is the plant is almost ready, not quite ready, but we can spray this on there and get that vegetable to the store faster and harvest it. And now you are taking a huge bite full of glyphosate because it's super, super concentrated. Super scary, right? So when we look at GMO foods, corn, number one, corn GMO product, soybean, potatoes, alfalfa. If you have horses, I know I don't treat horses, but horses are fed alfalfa. It's a huge GMO crop, and it's sprayed with glyphosate, sprayed with Roundup, heavily sprayed. Beets. So this is why, also going back to number one, this is so important to learn to read those pet food labels, know what these ingredients mean, because a lot of pet foods, chickpeas, legumes, GMOs, sprayed with glyphosate. We talk about grain-free diets leading to DCM or heart disease. Maybe you've heard of that. You've probably, if you've ever fed your pet grain-free food and you've gone into your conventional vet and told them you're feeding grain-free, they probably were super scared, told you to take them off that food immediately because it's going to cause heart issues. Not necessarily. However, some of the reasoning behind why some of these foods are leading to heart issues, not just taurine. There are pets that are testing taurine normal that are developing nutritionally responsive DCM, heart disease. So what that means is they're fed a different diet and the heart problem resolves. But the thing is that our GMO foods are absorbed differently. When we spray glyphosate on it, what it does, so glyphosate is not toxic to people. It's not. What it's toxic to is the microbiome, the bacteria, the soil microorganisms, the earth's microbiome. And what it does is it affects the ability for us to get the nutrients out of the food. It changes the nutrients that are in the food, and that's where we have so many issues. So the shikimate, I think I'm probably saying it wrong, but there's a certain pathway that your microflora has that utilizes the bacteria. Roundup kills that. It targets that. So your good bacteria die. That's what's happening. You don't die. You don't get sick. It doesn't affect our cells, but it affects those little things that make up trillions in our gut that are keeping us healthy. So that's why GMOs and glyphosate are a massive issue. So we need to be feeding organic if we can. Organic fruits and vegetables, grass-fed meats that are eating not grains and GMO products that are being sprayed. This is so important. And we can feed foods that optimize those detox pathways, those methylation pathways, so that when our pets come into contact with it, it's going to happen. We can't avoid it. It's in the air, it's in the water. But if we optimize your pet's detox pathways, we can give them help in getting rid of those toxins so they don't hopefully develop things like cancer, chronic disease. So foods that are really good at supporting detox pathways: asparagus, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cruciferous vegetables, high sulfur vegetables, fantastic at helping with the methylation pathways. Spinach, kale, bok choy, beef liver, and there's a lot of meats, eggs, remember, organic, grass-fed. So we can use food as medicine. This is why it's so important to go deep on food. This is why it's so important to get uncomfortable. Feeding Finn a home-cooked diet with a really busy schedule, when I was still working at the clinic, probably working like 60 to 80 hours a week and starting to think about this business and get this going, there were a lot of things going on. And thinking about coming home at the end of the day and having to cook for my dog because I hadn't batch cooked enough and he was out, not super fun, right? Like I just wanted to like sit down and take a breather. But I knew that by putting the right nutrients into his body, I could help him. Finn developed cancer. He had a brain tumor. He was fed a kibble diet for most of his life. He was. I got him at 8 weeks old as a puppy. I was in vet school. I thought I was doing the right thing. He was on Royal Canin, German Shepherd, puppy, I think. He was on Nutro. He was on other kibble diets that when I look at the ingredient list now, I actually truly want to vomit. I'm sorry. There's a lot of byproducts. There's a lot of grains. There's a lot of GMO corn, and there's not a lot of biologically appropriate proteins in those foods. And I know that because over time I fed him that it led to inflammation, that it led to those degenerative changes. And then when we moved to Northern Colorado, there's a lot of spraying that's done here. It's one of the first things I noticed. That's your environmental toxins. Can't avoid them. I'm not going to necessarily move when I have a job. However, we need to look at how do we optimize this pet's body through food, through supplements, through reducing stress. And that's why it was so important to me to feed Finn the right foods, even though I wish I could have started right at the beginning. I would change everything in a minute if I could have another day with that dog. He was the most awesome dog I've ever had, and I've had pets my whole life. He was incredible. So take these into consideration. Continue to empower yourself through knowledge, not just listening to a vet tell you no. I've been told no many times from vets. There's nothing more you can do. You have to feed this food. You can only feed this prescription food. Yes, it works for some pets, but it doesn't work for a lot of them. If your pet doesn't like its food, you need to find another way so that you can feed them the foods that are feeding their cells for reducing inflammation, degenerative changes that can lead to cancer, lead to disease. I know this is like a soapbox, but it is so important because it directly affected my life. I talk about Finn a lot, but we had 2 cats that passed away from aggressive GI lymphoma before Finn. Yeah, they were on kibble. They were on kibble until we transitioned them to raw, but it was too late. And I'm not saying it's ever too late to try something. There is always a time and a place, because I know if I hadn't transitioned Finn to a home cooked diet years ago, he would not be with us for as long as we had him when he did develop cancer, and he probably would have developed it sooner. So great question, Steph. What dog food do you recommend? It is individualized. That some pets, the pet parents need to feed kibble. So we try to find the best kibble for them. If we can get your pet to either a home cooked balanced diet or to a raw diet, that is optimal. But it will depend on the pet. So I can't say all pets will do well on raw, because they don't. And I see that. And not everyone can do a home cooked diet. There's a lot of great companies now that do delivery service that are balanced diets. Just Food for Dogs is a great one with real food. Nom Nom Now, The Farmer's Dog. There's a lot of great raws that are pre-made, balanced. Darwin's, Instinct, Stella and Chewy's, kibble diets. Origin would be a higher quality one that I would recommend if you had to feed a kibble. But that's where we can look at other things. So making sure you're reading those pet food labels, you know what they mean. You're assessing your pet's microbiome. Is it in good standing, or does it need to be improved? Is your pet on a biologically appropriate food? Where can you make improvements? Maybe it's just adding some real food in at least 3 times a week. What supplements can you use to fill in the gaps that might be missing? And how many toxins are in your pet's environment? Can you reduce them? And how do you support your pet's detox pathways, methylation pathways, so that you're helping them process these things? Those are 5 things that we need to be looking at every single day with our pets. And when we do that, and when we optimize it, that's when your pet will thrive, achieve optimal health. And you'll know you've done everything possible. And sometimes they'll still develop things. They can still get cancer. There is a genetic component. But the environment, food, and everything else we do matters much more, because we can change those genes. So keep those in mind when you're looking at your pet's food. You're seeing potentially imbalances, and looking at what can you change, how can you help them? And if you're finding you're running into roadblocks, you're using the same drugs, you're going to the vet clinic for the same problems, find an integrative vet, holistic vet to partner with, because there is a whole nother world of medicine that can help your pet. And if you want to go deep into your pet's microbiome and learning what you need to do to assess it, how can you tell if it's off? What do you need to give? Make sure you join our webinar, because it is so important. It is the foundation for health. We use food to feed the microbiome. And there are so many amazing things that we can do and achieve when we look at health kind of from the inside out. So I hope you found that really helpful. I appreciate all of you being here. Make sure you rewatch this for some of the resources that'll be posted on our Instagram page. So make sure you like and follow us. Also, it'll be posted on our YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe. We appreciate it. Helps us spread the message to other amazing pet parents like you. It's Dr. Katie Woodley, The Natural Pet Doctor, is our YouTube channel. Go to our website, thenaturalpetdoctor.com, register for the webinar, peruse all the blog posts. There's so much free content for pet parents, because I want you to know what's in your pet's food. I want you to know what supplements are safe. I want you to know which foods are safe to optimize your pet's health. So check it out. There's a lot of information there. So thenaturalpetdoctor.com. And next week, we'll be going live again every week for our coffee talk with the doc. I'll be posting a schedule. So make sure you opt into our email list to know what's coming up and joining us on Saturdays or rewatching if you can't. So appreciate all of you. I appreciate you taking the time to help your pets live a more optimal life and helping them thrive naturally. This is Dr. Katie Woodley, the Natural Pet Doctor.